Chris, can't thank you enough for being here. This is a conversation we've been looking forward to having, and really excited to hear your thoughts and to share them with our community.
Thanks so much for having me, Greg.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Why don't we dive in? You started this company in 2012, I think, to essentially serve the needs of everyday Americans who were often overlooked, sometimes perhaps not even, well treated by the traditional banks. Maybe just share with us a little bit about the moment when you said, hey, this is a customer that I want to serve, this is a company that I need to start.
I'd be lying if I didn't say I saw an attractive business opportunity in building this business, but it's actually more personal than that.
Yeah.
As you know, I grew up just outside of the Bronx in an apartment with my mom and my two siblings. Parents divorced, neither went to college. So I experienced firsthand regular, everyday people growing up. I got lucky to get a scholarship to go to a private school. And in my apartment, directly below me, lived a man named Joe.
Okay.
And Joe took me under his wing. My mom was working, selling vacuum cleaners door to door, hustling,
Wow.
teaching us all work ethic. And he just looked out for me like a grandfather. He eventually supported me, paid for me to go to the private school, and ultimately to go to college as well. That experience, it obviously sounds wild to actually believe someone would do that, but it just changed the direction of my life. But just thinking about how education and access can just change the trajectory of people's lives. I've always felt, a very close connection to our mission to help unlock financial progress for everyday people. And that's really what we've aimed to do. It started with a bank account that didn't rely on fees and helped people in the core areas that are, sort of most pressing related to their financial wellness.
Let's talk for a minute about, I think the phrase financial empowerment is one that gets a lot of play within Chime. What does that mean to you? How does it show up within Chime?
I think the thing that we realized in terms of this huge segment of America, it's about 75% of people in America roughly make under $100,000 a year, and about 2/3 of Americans live paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
So the result of that is that people just generally have anxiety around their money.
Right.
They sometimes feel like they don't know where they stand, and that the incumbent bank partner they might work with isn't necessarily that focused on trying to help them. We've been very conscious from the earliest days of creating a brand, but more importantly, an experience that gave people confidence that we were going to look out for their best interests, keep them connected to their balances, give them access to their money as quickly as possible. As you know, about 70% of our revenue comes from payments-driven revenue. So when people use their cards, online transactions or in person, that's primarily how we monetize through Visa when they pay us.
Yep.
And what we like about that is it creates a business model that's unique in that for banking because it's aligned with the consumer. We have to earn our position as the top of wallet card every day, and if we do that, then it works out economically
Good things happen,
for us.
Yeah,
and that's very different than I think how a lot of the incumbents serve this everyday consumer segment, which is more focused on a little more nickel and diming, a little bit more fees for a low balance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Going back, when I think about when we first met, you described it for us and you talked about these everyday Americans and you talked about no fees, and now we're sitting here in 2025. How have you stayed so close to that vision and not veered off the path?
Well, I would say we're certainly battle tested from the early days when we had a lot of skeptics. So, many people passed on investing in Chime. We knew from the earliest days that the best way to serve this everyday consumer is by developing primary account relationships, generally direct deposit relationships. And most investors said, God, Chris, why would you start with that? That is, yes, it's the most valuable relationship in financial services, but it's the hardest one to cultivate. And we knew that if you were successful in developing the trust of a primary relationship, there's no shortage of ways to monetize the relationship. We prefer monetizing through payments, but there's obviously lots of additional opportunities to add services that we can offer in a low-cost way to help people make progress in their lives. And so, that vision's actually never really changed, and I think it really does create a unique advantage for us because we've been able to develop that and be known as a service that you use for primary banking services.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit different than I think some of the other fintech apps.
Yeah, when you think about that relationship of trust that you were just describing, it doesn't sound high tech, it doesn't sound profitable, it just sounds kind of straight down the middle. But you've built an enormous amount of technology that sits underneath all of this. And our thesis, a big part of that, is just sort of hearing you and your co-founder Ryan talk about all that you were building that was going to take cost out of the equation so that you could be, effectively the most efficient bank, digital or otherwise, and serve your customers in a way that was no fee and still a profitable business.
I think what really drove that for us was actually a challenging event. One of the, if I think back in our history and just like some of the most memorable moments, sometimes the best opportunity to grow is from these challenging times.
Yes.
And in 2019, we had a situation where our third-party processing system had an outage for a few hours.
I remember.
It was a brutal time, and man, Ryan and I don't think Ryan slept for a couple days, and it was really just one of these moments in the company culture where we saw everyone across the company step up, just, recruiters, finance people, answering customer service questions and so forth. Right. And I remember just struggling with how to communicate to our members in a authentic way, taking accountability, owning it, and sent this note out to millions of people, and just got the most incredible feedback ever. I thought everyone would, people were frustrated. I won't say they weren't angry.
Because they didn't have access to their money for those few hours.
Yeah, for a few hours there. But the feedback we got, it was this incredible love for our product and service, kind of like, hey, we understand, that sort of thing happens from time to time, but like, I love you guys and we're with you for life. And it was just one of these moments where you realize like how incredibly important a role we play in our members' lives, and that we can't take it for granted, and we have to make sure that we do everything in our power to make sure we have an always-on service. And so it was that moment in time, actually, that really drove us to decide that we would own our own core. We would build it, right. And we built it, and now we operate our own core, which I think is quite a bit differentiated relative to other bank companies in the bank space or fintech space.
Absolutely.
Prioritize enhancements, how we want to do it, and make sure that we have full control of our destiny, and making sure that we're taking care of our members.
And so I guess that really has manifested itself in the product strategy very fully.
Yeah, and then we do our best to try to celebrate that and profile people that are making good progress, or other people that are just, fit our ethos, giving back to the community in some way. We do this thing where we celebrate what we call change makers, and we honor people that are doing positive things in their communities who also happen to be Chime members.
Oh, amazing. Okay.
Yeah, people assume that if you're only making $35,000, $45,000, $55,000 a year, yes, a lot of these folks are living paycheck to paycheck, like I did growing up. But these are people that aren't down on their luck. I mean, they're
living their lives.
They're living their lives. They're giving back to their communities. They're volunteering, and so we do everything we can to try to celebrate our members and make sure that we're doing everything we can.
Tell us about the Chime Scholars program and what you've built there and how that's working and what it's all about.
I'm incredibly proud and excited about the Chime Scholars Foundation. We took the 1% pledge, so we took 1% of our equity. And the basic concept is to help people that need a little bit of a...
And it's amazing, sorry to interrupt, but 1% when you made this pledge was probably you didn't have the same numbers in mind that perhaps we're thinking about today, and it's in absolute terms,
let's hope, it should be pretty
a decent size.
Should be pretty well funded. It's incredibly exciting. So we're helping people, including people from sort of non-traditional backgrounds. So this isn't just for four-year elite, colleges and that sort of thing. It's for everyday people. Last year we gave about 500 scholarships. So we do up to $20,000 of scholarships over the course of 4 years, and our goal is over the next few years to get to 10,000 scholarships. And it isn't just for Chime members.
It's extraordinary.
Or their families, but we obviously
some of them are Chime members.
We do get some Chimers. We think it's important for corporations to also set a good example. There's lots of places to focus. Ryan and I chose education in large part based on some of the background that I have.
No, at ICONIQ we're very focused on impact, and we love what you're doing, and feel proud also to be part of it. Well, let's talk about the future a little bit. We're sitting here now, we've talked about sort of how far you've come. fast forward 10 years, 20 years. Tell me what Chime looks like.
I appreciate you bringing up generational. That is exactly how we think about
Yeah.
this company and this brand. Chime is already, for among consumers that make up to $100,000 a year, we're now the #3 banking brand in America. And we're not a bank. We partner with banks that hold the deposits. So Chime is only behind JP Morgan and Bank of America today in terms of unaided brand awareness. And I think sort of sets the stage for us and our opportunity to continue to grow and become the primary account relationship for people, for now, starting up to about $100,000 a year of income. We want to be the #1 by market share in that category, and I think looking out into the future, that given where we are today, that we think that that is attainable. We're
Given all that you've done, it seems like it ought to be within your,
Yeah, we're going to keep adding on
ambition.
New products and services to drive more engagement. We're going to continue to be known as the company that that you set up your direct deposit and use as a primary bank account, and basically be the center of your financial lives.
Let's talk about leadership a little bit. Of all the founders we've worked with, you and Ryan are certainly right up among the most exceptional of them, and at the same time, you've built a team that's extraordinary in its own right. What is just some thoughts around how you wind up with a team like the one you have?
I think it starts with hiring exceptionally talented people, and that's clearly, we have a very high bar for that. But I think we're also really lucky in that the focus of the company, the mission of the company, allows us to attract people who are excited about that mission and really passionate about it. I think a lot of people that we've been able to recruit just really connect with, struggling a little bit financially based on how they grew up and so forth. So that it really serves as an advantage to us in terms of bringing top-tier talent who are passionate.
Chime is obviously a mission-driven company. What advice do you have for other founders who are inspired by what you've done?
This was my first time as a CEO.
Yep.
And I remember one of the first most important hires we ever made was a woman named Melissa Alvarado, who I hired as a director of analytics and growth. In one of our first meetings, I recruited her for about a year before she actually joined the company. And she asked me, well, tell me about your core values. And I didn't have them at the tip of my tongue to articulate. And she's like, well, you don't have them on the wall? And why do we have to do that? And I'll never forget how important that was to her.
Right.
And she was so right, because by being able
to... You had them, but to articulate.
We had them, but we just well, of course, we're just gonna hire people that are kind of wired like us. So I would say take the time to make sure you understand what your mission and your vision is. It might sound hokey, it might sound unnecessary when you're just trying to survive to the next financing round. But I think that's critically important. It sort of sets the tone. And then, like the old saying goes, you gotta hire fast and fire faster if it's not working out.
Yeah.
And I hate to sound ruthless about it, but you gotta get going, you gotta deliver the results that you promised to get to that next milestone. And so sometimes you gotta
We all have responsibilities that extend beyond ourselves.
That's right. Yeah. Sometimes you gotta be tough. So make sure you're ready to make those sorts of tough decisions, but ultimately, you never go wrong by just focusing on the segment you serve, the customer you serve. Make sure you really understand what their needs are, and then make sure you hire really talented people around you to help you execute that.
Chris, this has been a terrific discussion. Thank you so much for sharing all that you have that's been both personal and business. It's really been great to talk with you today.
Thanks for having me. It was a great chat.